I was born in Brooklyn, 1942. My father died when I was just 15 months old. People talk about missing someone, but how do you miss what you never had? I never knew his voice, his smell, or his hands. I only knew the silence he left behind, a silence my mother filled with sharp words and cold air. We were poor. Not poor like no vacations poor. Poor like counting coins for milk. Poor like sleeping in the same small apartment where dreams went to die quietly. My mother, Diana, worked as a school secretary. She was practical, bitter, and tired. I think she wanted to love me, but grief had hardened her. She often told me, "You're not pretty, Barbara. You'll have to find something else to make people notice you." Imagine hearing that when you're 10. I believed her. I learned early that love was something you had to earn, by being useful, by being perfect, by being more.
So I sang.
Not because I thought I was talented, but because it was the only thing that made me feel beautiful. When I opened my mouth, people stopped talking.
They looked at me.
That look, that mix of surprise and awe, it was my first taste of love. I didn't have new clothes or smooth hair or the kind of face magazines adored. My nose was too big, my eyes too intense, my voice too loud. But that voice, it was my escape, my rebellion, my prayer. When I was 16, I told my mother I wanted to be an actress. She laughed. "You? With that face?" It hurt, but it fueled me. Every cruel word became a stepping stone. Every rejection became a verse in the song I hadn't yet written. I worked at a small theater, auditioned for anything they'd let me try, lived on crackers and dreams. I remember standing in line at auditions, watching other girls, beautiful, confident, perfect, and thinking, I'll never look like them. But maybe I'll sound like no one else. Then, somehow, it happened. I won a talent contest at a small club, and people started to talk. My name, mispronounced, misspelled, began to mean something. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. But success doesn't heal the wounds. It only shines brighter light on them. When fame came, I was still that Brooklyn girl desperate to be told she was enough. I met men who said they loved me, but most of them loved the idea of me. The voice, the image, the power, not the person behind it. When I met Elliot Gould, I was young, insecure, and hopeful. He made me laugh. He didn't seem threatened by my ambition. We married in 1963, when I was barely out of my teens, and for a while, I believed I'd finally built a family I'd never had. We had a son, Jason, and for a moment, I thought everything made sense. I was a mother, a wife, an artist. But the truth is, I was still a girl searching for approval, still working too much, still terrified of silence. Fame was growing, and so was the distance between us. Elliot wanted a wife who stayed home, who supported quietly. I wanted a life that reached the sky. He used to say I didn't know how to stop. He was right. I didn't. Maybe I was afraid that if I stopped, I'd hear my mother's voice again, whispering that I wasn't beautiful, that I wasn't enough. We divorced in 1971. It was peaceful, almost polite, but it broke something in me. I'd failed at the one thing I wanted to get right, love. After the divorce, I tried to fill the void. There were men, some kind, some cruel, most confused by me. Don Johnson, Pierre Trudeau, Ryan O'Neal, each one a chapter that started with promise and ended with loneliness. I think I scared them. I was too intense, too independent, too sure and too unsure at the same time. People think fame gives you options. It doesn't. It gives you illusions. Men who chase your spotlight, not your soul. I wanted someone who'd see the girl from Brooklyn under the gowns and gold. Someone who'd love my voice even when it wasn't singing. But I kept choosing mirrors instead of partners. Men who reflected my need for validation, not love. I remember once, after a breakup, sitting alone in my giant house, surrounded by awards and silence. I looked at my Oscar, this golden symbol of everything I'd fought for, and thought, you don't hug back. That's when I realized I had built my life around applause. I had traded intimacy for admiration. I had become the woman the world adored, and the girl no one really knew. Still, I didn't regret it. I couldn't. Every broken heart became another song, Every rejection another performance. Pain was my language. People called me difficult. Maybe I was. But when you grow up fighting to be seen, you learn to defend yourself. You learn to demand. And you learn that being too much is better than being invisible. By the late 70s, I was rich, famous, and still lonely. I'd walk off stage after a standing ovation and feel nothing. The lights would fade, and so would the feeling. I had everything, except someone to share it with. I started to understand my mother then. Her coldness wasn't cruelty, it was fear. Fear of losing again. Fear of loving too much. Maybe I inherited that too. But I kept hoping. I kept believing love would come back, softer this time, wiser. And it did, though I didn't recognize it at first. His name was James Brolin. But that's another story. The story of a woman who finally stopped performing long enough to be loved for real. By the time I met James, I had stopped believing in forever. I had learned to live alone, to eat dinner with the sound of my own voice echoing through an empty house, to fall asleep surrounded by flowers that didn't need me. I told myself I liked it that way. Independence became my armor, solitude my friend. But deep down, there was still that little girl from Brooklyn, waiting for someone to say, "You're enough just as you are." I met James Brolin at a dinner party in 1996. I wasn't looking for love. I had given up that game. I was 54, famous, guarded, and a little tired of pretending I had it all figured out. He walked in, tall, calm, confident, with that easy charm only a man who's lived a little can have. And then he said the strangest thing. He looked at me and said, "Who messed up your hair?" I laughed. No one had ever dared talk to me like that. Most people came to me with reverence, fear, or flattery. But he was just teasing. It was the first time in years I didn't feel like Barbra Streisand, the legend. I felt like Barbra, the woman. We started seeing each other, slowly, cautiously. I had walls higher than any stage backdrop. I kept waiting for him to flinch, for the moment he'd realize I was complicated, demanding, not the easy kind of woman men write songs about. But he didn't run. He stayed. He saw through me, past the perfection, past the insecurities. He didn't want to fix me.
He wanted to know me.
That scared me more than anything. Love, real love, requires stillness. And I had spent my whole life moving, performing, directing, controlling, anything to stay ahead of the silence. But with James, I couldn't hide behind spotlights or scripts. He didn't want a performance. He wanted truth. The night he first told me he loved me, I didn't know what to say. Not because I didn't feel it, but because I wasn't sure I deserved it. You can spend a lifetime being applauded and still not know how to accept love. We married in 1998. I wore white, not as a symbol of innocence, but of hope. Hope that maybe it wasn't too late to start over. People said I changed after marrying him. Maybe I did. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove myself. I didn't have to be dazzling. I could be quiet. I could be imperfect. James has this way of grounding me. He listens when I talk too much, smiles when I overthink, and reminds me to breathe when I spiral into details, because, let's face it, I've always been obsessed with details. He builds things with his hands. I build things with my heart. Somehow it works. It took me decades to learn that love isn't grand gestures or fiery arguments. It's peace. It's waking up next to someone who doesn't need you to be extraordinary every day. I used to think love had to hurt to be real. My mother's love hurt. My early relationships hurt. Even my art came from pain. But James showed me another kind, the gentle kind. The kind that doesn't demand, doesn't wound, doesn't leave you wondering. Sometimes, late at night, I walk through our garden. The moonlight touches the roses, and I think about that little girl, the one who sang to be seen, who worked so hard to be enough. I want to tell her she made it, not just to the stage, but to herself. I used to chase perfection. In music, in movies, in mirrors. But perfection is lonely. You can't touch it, you can't hold it, and no one can meet you there. Now, I prefer warmth over brilliance. Laughter over applause. Presence over perfection. People still call me a control freak. Maybe I am. But I think it's because control was the only way I survived. When life takes your father too soon, when your mother tells you you're not beautiful, when men love your fame more than your face, control becomes your safety net. But with James, I learned to let go. Just a little. I still direct things, dinners, lighting, sometimes his wardrobe, but I've learned to laugh at myself for it. He teases me, I tease back. It's love, in our own language. As I've grown older, I've stopped chasing youth. The world worships the new, but I've learned there's something exquisite in experience. In knowing what matters, what doesn't. In finally understanding that being loved doesn't mean changing who you are. I look in the mirror now, and I see my mother's face in mine. For years, that terrified me. Now it comforts me. I understand her in ways I couldn't when I was young. Her harshness came from loss, her silence from survival. Maybe, in her own way, she was trying to protect me from disappointment. If I could talk to her now, I'd say, "You were wrong, Mama. I was beautiful, just not in the way you meant. I used to think beauty was what people saw. Now I know it's what people feel when they're around you. And love, real love, is the same." Sometimes young women ask me what advice I'd give them. I tell them this. Don't chase approval. Don't apologize for ambition. Don't shrink to fit into someone else's idea of enough. If someone can't handle your light, that's their problem, not yours. Because here's the truth. All the applause in the world means nothing if you can't stand the silence when the curtain falls. Now, when the lights go down, I'm not afraid anymore. I have peace. I have love. I have a garden that blooms without an audience. And maybe, finally, I've learned that the girl from Brooklyn didn't need to become someone else to be loved. She just needed to come home to herself.